And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. The 10 Commandments. The first 4 detail how to love God, and the last 6 detail how to love our fellow man. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Jehovah, the eternal, self-existent, uncreated one, himself the source and sustainer of all, is alone entitled to supreme reverence and worship. Man is forbidden to give to any other object the first place in his affections or his service. Whatever we cherish that tends to lessen our love for God or to interfere with the service due him, of that do we make a god. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. The second commandment forbids the worship of the true God by images or similitudes. Many heathen nations claimed that their images were mere figures or symbols by which the deity was worshipped, but God has declared such worship to be sin. The attempt to represent the Eternal One by material objects would lower man's conception of God. The mind, turned away from the infinite perfection of Jehovah, would be attracted to the creature rather than to the Creator. And as his conceptions of God were lowered, so would man become degraded. I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. The close and sacred relation of God to his people is represented under the figure of marriage. Idolatry being spiritual adultery, the displeasure of God against it is fitly called jealousy. Visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me. It is inevitable that children should suffer from the consequences of parental wrongdoing, but they are not punished for the parents' guilt, except as they participate in their sins. It is usually the case, however, that children walk in the steps of their parents. By inheritance and example, the sons become partakers of the father's sin. Wrong tendencies, perverted appetites, and debased morals, as well as physical disease and degeneracy, are transmitted as a legacy from father to son, to the 3rd and 4th generation. This fearful truth should have a solemn power to restrain men from following a course of sin. Showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments. In prohibiting the worship of false gods, the 2nd commandment by implication enjoins the worship of the true God. And to those who are faithful in his service, mercy is promised, not merely to the 3rd and 4th generation as is the wrath threatened against those who hate him, but to thousands of generations. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. This commandment not only prohibits false oaths and common swearing, but it forbids us to use the name of God in a light or careless manner, without regard to its awful significance. By the thoughtless mention of God in common conversation, by appeals to him in trivial matters, and by the frequent and thoughtless repetition of his name, we dishonor him. Holy and reverend is his name, Psalm 111 verse 9. All should meditate upon his majesty, his purity and holiness, that the heart may be impressed with a sense of his exalted character, and his holy name should be uttered with reverence and solemnity. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor, and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and hallowed it. The Sabbath is not introduced as a new institution but as having been founded at creation. It is to be remembered and observed as the memorial of the Creator's work. Pointing to God as the maker of the heavens and the earth, it distinguishes the true God from all false gods. All who keep the 7th day signify by this act that they are worshippers of Jehovah. Thus the Sabbath is the sign of man's allegiance to God as long as there are any upon the earth to serve him. The 4th commandment is the only one of all the 10 in which are found both the name and the title of the lawgiver. It is the only one that shows, by whose authority, the law is given. Thus it contains the seal of God, affixed to his law as evidence of its authenticity and binding force. God has given men 6 days wherein to labor, and he requires that their own work be done in the 6 working days. Acts of necessity and mercy are permitted on the Sabbath, the sick and suffering are at all times to be cared for, but unnecessary labor is to be strictly avoided. Turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord, honorable, and honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure. Isaiah 58 verse 13. Nor does the prohibition end here. Nor speaking thine own words, says the prophet. Those who discuss business matters or lay plans on the Sabbath are regarded by God as though engaged in the actual transaction of business. To keep the Sabbath holy, we should not even allow our minds to dwell upon things of a worldly character. And the commandment includes all within our gates. The inmates of the house are to lay aside their worldly business during the sacred hours. All should unite to honor God by willing service upon his holy day. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Parents are entitled to a degree of love and respect which is due to no other person. God himself, who has placed upon them a responsibility for the souls committed to their charge, has ordained that during the earlier years of life, parents shall stand in the place of God to their children. And he who rejects the rightful authority of his parents is rejecting the authority of God. The fifth commandment requires children not only to yield respect, submission, and obedience to their parents, but also to give them love and tenderness, to lighten their cares, to guard their reputation, and to succor and comfort them in old age. It also enjoins respect for ministers and rulers, and for all others to whom God has delegated authority. This, says the Apostle, is the first commandment with promise, Ephesians 6 verse 2. To Israel, expecting soon to enter Canaan, it was a pledge to the obedient, of long life in that good land. But it has a wider meaning, including all the Israel of God, and promising eternal life upon the earth when it shall be freed from the curse of sin. Thou shalt not kill. All acts of injustice that tend to shorten life, the spirit of hatred and revenge, or the indulgence of any passion that leads to injurious acts toward others, or causes us even to wish them harm, for whosoever hateth his brother is a murderer, a selfish neglect of caring for the needy or suffering, all self-indulgence, or unnecessary deprivation or excessive labor that tends to injure health, all these are, to a greater or less degree, violations of the sixth commandment. Thou shalt not commit adultery. This commandment forbids not only acts of impurity, but sensual thoughts and desires, or any practice that tends to excite them. Purity is demanded not only in the outward life but in the secret intents and emotions of the heart. Christ, who taught the far-reaching obligation of the law of God, declared the evil thought or look to be as truly sin as is the unlawful deed. Thou shalt not steal. Both public and private sins are included in this prohibition. The eighth commandment condemns man-stealing and slave-dealing, and forbids wars of conquest. It condemns theft and robbery. It demands strict integrity in the minutest details of the affairs of life. It forbids overreaching in trade, and requires the payment of just debts or wages. It declares that every attempt to advantage oneself by the ignorance, weakness, or misfortune of another is registered as fraud in the books of heaven. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. False speaking in any matter, every attempt or purpose to deceive our neighbor, is here included. An intention to deceive is what constitutes falsehood. By a glance of the eye, a motion of the hand, an expression of the countenance, a falsehood may be told as effectually as by words. All intentional overstatement, every hint or insinuation calculated to convey an erroneous or exaggerated impression, even the statement of facts in such a manner as to mislead, is falsehood. This precept forbids every effort to injure our neighbor's reputation by misrepresentation or evil surmising, by slander or talebearing. Even the intentional suppression of truth, by which injury may result to others, is a violation of the ninth commandment. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. The 10th commandment strikes at the very root of all sins, prohibiting the selfish desire, from which springs the sinful act. He who in obedience to God's law, refrains from indulging even a sinful desire for that which belongs to another, will not be guilty of an act of wrong toward his fellow creatures. Review. The 10 Commandments in short. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Only one being can supply all your needs and sustain you. worship and revere only Him. Make Him first in your affections. Let nothing affect this priority. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Maintain a high conception of God. Focus the mind on the infinite perfection of Jehovah. Do not worship images or any similitudes of God. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Honor God with your words. Meditate upon His majesty, His purity and holiness, be awed by His exalted character. Don't use God's name in a light or careless manner. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. Remember your Creator and build your relationship with Him. Honor His choice of day. Spend quality time with Him. Keep away all distractions of any form. Honor thy father and thy mother. Love and respect parents and all others to whom God has delegated authority. Yield respect, submission, and obedience to your parents, with love and tenderness. Lighten their cares, guard their reputation, succor and comfort them in old age. Thou shalt not kill. Love and respect human life. No acts of injustice that tend to shorten life. No spirit of hatred and revenge. No indulgence of any passion that leads to injurious acts toward others, or causes us even to wish them harm. No selfish neglect of caring for the needy or suffering. No self-indulgence or unnecessary deprivation or excessive labor that tends to injure health. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Be faithful. No acts of impurity. No sensual thoughts and desires, or any practice that tends to excite them. Be pure in both the outward life and in the secret intents and emotions of the heart. Thou shalt not steal. Have strict integrity in the minutest details. No man stealing, slave dealing, wars of conquest, theft, robbery. Pay fair debts or wages. Do not attempt to advantage oneself by another's ignorance, weakness, or misfortune. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Be truthful. No false speaking in any matter. No attempt or intention to deceive, by a glance of the eye, a motion of the hand, an expression of the countenance, intentional overstatement, hint or insinuation calculated to mislead, slander or tale-bearing, intentional suppression of truth, etc. Thou shalt not covet. Be contented. Be thankful for what you already have. No selfish desire for that which belongs to another. Oh, how love I thy law! It is my meditation all the day. Thou through thy commandments hast made me wiser than mine enemies, for they are ever with me. I have more understanding than all my teachers, for thy testimonies are my meditation. I understand more than the ancients, because I keep thy precepts. I have refrained my feet from every evil way, that I might keep thy word. I have not departed from thy judgments, for thou hast taught me. How sweet are thy words unto my taste! Yea, sweeter than honey to my mouth. Through thy precepts I get understanding, therefore I hate every false way. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path. Psalms 119 verses 97 to 105.